Welcome to The Explainer. So, how does a civilization actually get made? Today, we're going to dive into the incredible 1,200-year journey that took ancient India from a land of scattered tribes and forged it into one of history's great empires. To really get a sense of this, just look at the starting and ending points. In 600 BCE, you've got these small, isolated tribal groups, okay? Now let's jump forward 12 centuries to 600 CE. The picture is totally different. We're talking about a sophisticated Golden Age empire, famous for its incredible achievements. I mean, that is a mind-blowing transformation.
And that brings us to the big question, right? How on earth does a patchwork of tribes become this flourishing civilization, known all over the world for its art, its science, its philosophy? Well, let's get into it. Okay, so this whole story really kicks off around the 6th century BCE. This is where we see the first real seeds of centralized power being planted all across the subcontinent.
It all starts with this number, 16. That's the number of powerful states, the Mahajanapadas, that popped up across the land. And listen, these weren't just tribes anymore, no way. We are talking about organized kingdoms, each with its own capital city, a standing army, and a proper system for collecting taxes. This was a whole new level of organization.
So you've got 16 kingdoms all fighting for the top spot. How did one of them, Magadha, end up dominating everyone else? Well, it had this perfect combination of advantages. First, incredibly fertile land, which means you can feed your people and your armies. Second, a unique military weapon, war elephants. And third, and this is huge, access to rich iron mines for way better weapons and tools. It was a winning formula.
This consolidation of power under Magadha really set the stage for something even bigger, India's very first great empire. And the Mauryans, well, they didn't just conquer territory, they actually created an imperial blueprint that would be copied for centuries.
The dynasty's rise was incredibly fast and, really methodical. It all starts with the founder, this super ambitious guy, Chandragupta Maurya. His son, Bindusara, pushes the empire's borders out even further. But it was his grandson, Ashoka, who took it to its absolute peak, controlling pretty much the entire subcontinent.
Now, the really crucial thing to understand here is that the Mauryans were not just winging it, not at all. Their success was guided by this incredible political playbook called the Arthashastra. Seriously, you can think of it as a detailed step-by-step guide to running a state. It covers everything from tax policy and foreign relations to espionage and military tactics.
This quote, wow, it just perfectly captures the empire's really unique turn under Ashoka. See, after a brutally bloody war, he had a change of heart and adopted this policy of Dhamma, basically a kind of conquest through morality. He had this shared moral and civic code carved on pillars all across his empire. And in doing so, he found this powerful new way to unite a vast, diverse population, not just with force, but with a common set of values.
But look, an empire needs more than a great philosophy and a political blueprint. It needs a powerful economic engine to keep the whole thing running. So what was fueling this massive system? At its heart, the empire ran on agriculture. It was this simple but really powerful cycle. Clear forests to create new farmland, use those iron plows we talked about to make that land way more productive. This leads to massive food surpluses, which can then be taxed, usually about 1/6 of the harvest, and that money funds the entire state. But it wasn't just farming. Oh no, a buzzing commercial economy was absolutely taking off. You had these vibrant cities like Patalitra and Ujjain becoming hubs for craftsmen. Merchants were organizing into these powerful guilds called shrenis, and they started using standardized coins. This all created a sophisticated trade network that connected India to the great powers of the world, from Rome all the way to China.
All this economic prosperity, all this political stability that was built over centuries, it all comes together. It culminates in a period so innovative and so creative that today we call it India's Golden Age.
This was the era of the Gupta dynasty. You had rulers like Chandragupta II who oversaw this long period of peace and stability. And that, right there, created the perfect conditions for a cultural explosion. We're talking everything from the epic poems of Kalidasa to absolutely groundbreaking advances in mathematics.
And you can really see why it's called the Golden Age. It wasn't just progress in one area. It was a boom right across the board. That strong economic foundation that had been built for centuries, it allowed for these incredible achievements in everything from sculpture and poetry to mathematics and astronomy. Okay, so we've seen the rise of kings and economies and empires. But what about the people? How did all these massive political and economic shifts actually affect the daily lives of ordinary folks? society became way more complex and honestly full of contradictions. On the one hand, the traditional social hierarchy, the Varna system, it got even more rigid, with Brahmanas gaining a ton of power. But at the very same time, that boom in trade and cities created a whole new dynamic. It allowed merchants and artisans to gain wealth and social status based on their skills, not just who they were born as.
Now, you might be sitting there wondering, okay, this is all fascinating, but how in the world do we know all this? How have historians pieced together this 1,200-year-old story in such detail?
Well, the answer is some pretty amazing historical detective work, piecing together clues from a ton of different sources. We have royal decrees that rulers like Ashoka literally carved right into stone pillars. We have these incredible surviving texts like the Arthashastra that give us a window right into their political thinking. We even have accounts from foreign travelers like the Greek ambassador Megasthenes, who wrote down everything he saw. And all of this is backed up by physical evidence from archaeology, like the coins that prove just how far their trade networks reached.
So, there you have it. From scattered tribes to a golden age, this 1,200-year period forged the very foundations of a civilization. And it leaves us with one last thing to think about. Empires rise and they fall, but their ideas can last forever. So when you look at the world today, where do you see the echoes of these ancient innovators? In the way we govern? In how we trade? Maybe even in our ideas about morality? It's something to think about.